The following is a presentation of Tuning into Sci-Fi TV, the viewer's guide to genre television.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Small Council Matters podcast. I am Wendy Hembrock, and our council is in session. So let's go around the table and introduce yourselves, Maesters.
Hello, I'm Christine from Michigan, your mistress of correction and communication. Ooh. You can like my Facebook page, Christine Peruski. Follow me on Instagram, Christine Peruski. I swear I will start posting there soon. Really.
I am Jesse Jackson from Dallas, Texas, and you can find me on Twitter, AKX, at Jesse Jackson DFW, and I am excited to talk about Hotel King's Landing, where you can check out, but you can never leave.
Hey everybody, this is Shannon out in the Pacific Northwest. You can find me online on Twitter at TNRLM. And to paraphrase Saturday Night Live, that's my king in a box.
That's awesome. I'm Wendy. I am the maester of links and Google documents. Today we're going to be discussing House the Dragon, episode 5 of season 2, Regent. As a reminder, we'd love to hear from you. We love your ravens, your comments, your emails. Join our Game of Thrones channel in Discord. There's lots of fun commentary going on in there when we're not podcasting. We also love to hear from you through social media. You can reach us on X Twitter at SCM_pod or at Tuning Into Sci-Fi. You can come to our main tuningintoscifitv.com site and click the link to record a voicemail. We love to hear people's full-throated comments, or you can call us at 706-927-8478. So first up, we got a good bunch of news and links. Very dragon-centric this week, not surprisingly. First up, we have George R. R. Martin pontificating about dragons on his Not a Blog, which was pretty interesting to me. We also have an interview with the director of episode 205, Claire Kilner, and she had some very thoughtful comments to share about particular elements of this episode. We also have a really good interview with Tom Glenn Carney, who plays Aegon, talking about Aegon's future and his acting choices now that Aegon's sort of in a new state. We also got an update about the Iron Throne play that's coming, might be coming out next year. We have the link to the House of Dragons Built episode, which was also very interesting this week for me. And we also have a link to the dragon lineage in case folks maybe saw it before but forgot or are now finally getting more interested. And also I found somebody posted the lyrics translation from Valyrian of the song that Daemon sang to Vermithor in season 1, which was kind of cool. And we'll share that as well. So first, thoughts on any of the links?
Yeah. So I didn't read George R. R. Martin's whole blog. He's a writer, so he wrote a lot. And I skimmed it, and his big complaint is that the dragons in the show have 4 legs, which is not traditional fantasy dragons. And his argument is that no animal has 6 limbs. And I would like to point out, because this seems to be a common misconception, that insects are animals, because they're certainly not vegetables or minerals, and one of their defining characteristics is that they have 6 legs. So that's just not true. And besides, they're fantasy creatures, you know. And I think it gets awkward having a dragon sit upright or lean on its wings, so I prefer that they have 4 legs. That's cool with me. I actually don't remember hearing anything about a play, and I was looking at this. This appears to take place entirely at the Harrenhal tourney that kicks off Robert's Rebellion. I think that's a nice little microcosm to blow up into a full play. I see the potential for a play in that, and I'm actually interested in seeing it. The article also mentioned other TV shows or books that have been turned into plays, like Harry Potter. I knew about that one, but also Stranger Things. I didn't know about this. Is it coming to my town? Oh my God.
It reminded me once for my birthday several years ago, they had a workshop for a redoing of Superman the musical. And it was, Linda's like, you want to go? It's a musical about Superman. What could be better? So, right? Like a musical about Stranger Things? Yeah. Lot of great stuff on there. I didn't get to read all of it. I'm making notes to go back and see. A couple of things that I think's interesting is I didn't get dragons last year. Like I kind of, okay, they're dragons. And now I kind of understand they're rock stars, in this universe. I know they call them gods, but, in our way to think, so they're beloved, they're cared. There's, one of them is, like Aretha Franklin. Another is, like Elvis or something. So I just think that's really interesting that how much they appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to discussing that. I'm sure that's going to be one of the topics we'll discuss. I haven't read the interview with Tom Glenn Carney yet, but in the official Game of Thrones podcast that we've talked about a couple of times, they interviewed Ian Mitchell, who plays Aemon. And they said that it was a really good interview, but they said after he left, they were kind of wrapping. The host said that when they logged on to Zoom and to kind of before they started, he did the sound check in Valerian, High Valerian. Like he's going along and they're like, this guy is the coolest guy ever. He did pay attention in class. So, I really recommend that podcast. Check out the other links and hang tight. We're going to have a really fun one tonight.
That's a cool story, Jesse. And he was so good at it too. Obviously the lessons stuck. About Christine, it was the dragons that George is referencing are only on the sigils and the merch is where the 4 legs thing came from. Nobody ever tried to make a actual dragon with 4 legs. I don't think he would have allowed that at all. But somehow it got past him, and I think it was like mid show run when Daenerys raised her own banners and they had 4 instead of 6. So anyway, that's what that was all about. And he hates the 4 legs and the sigil. The play, I hadn't heard about that either. And as you noted, Christine, that's a great thing that's full of rich and juicy drama, because that's where Rhaegar Targaryen presented the wreath for the Queen of Love and Beauty to Lyanna Stark instead of his wife, Elia Martell. And then Lyanna Stark was Robert's betrothed and kicked off the whole thing there. So then there are a lot of characters that we know from the saga present there. The only thing I don't understand is how they're going to do jousting on a stage. Is it going to be like Monty Python and the Coconuts, or are they going to have like little stick horses, or what are they going to do? But I would definitely go see that if that was in town. And I think that was it for my comments on that. So
Shannon,
I'm sorry.
I think they go. Go ahead.
I'm going to be rude, but I want to speak for all book readers out there. Less complaining about sigils, George R. R. Martin, and more writing on Winds of Winter. Okay?
Here.
Throw it out there.
So in his blog, he actually talks about, I explain all this in the books I haven't finished writing, which was really kind of a slap in the face.
Oh, God, yes.
I thought, to fans. And it's absolutely true what Christine was saying about insects having 6 legs. In the blog, he was referring specifically, I think, to animals that fly, was where he was going with that.
There are insects that fly.
True. The thing I found interesting was his comments about the territorial nature of dragons and how they wouldn't go anywhere if they didn't have dragon riders that were taking them off to places, which explains why they stayed in Old Valyria and they stayed in Dragonstone, which I hadn't really thought about any of that. So, but as we've sort of been advancing this idea of these other dragon riders, it's kind of interesting, especially to find these sort of wild dragons that are out there besides the unclaimed ones that we know about. Jesse, the thing about, you mentioned the dragons being inspiring like rock stars. Well, Bela's dragon specifically, the direction for that dragon was David Bowie, was how it was supposed to look. So that's a great, analogy to use for how they're treated. I really like that. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was in that Tom Glencarney interview, he talks a lot about the prosthetics for the burns and everything, and I'm sure we'll get into that when we talk about the episode. But he kind of developed a whole like meditative state because he was in this chair for so long. He got to know himself in a whole new way because he couldn't move or talk while he was doing that. So it was kind of cool. And the last thing I want to mention is in the house that dragons built, the thing I thought that was really cool was, one, how excited the actors were when they talked about going to Wales, to all the different locations. And the cinematography of these places was just stunning. I mean, a lot of times, especially in this show, you think, oh, they made it more beautiful with special effects. It's like, they really didn't. And the one where Damon's out having his difficult conversation with the Brackens, and they have the buck up on this lift, and that's the real buck. So they originally shot that with a blue screen, and they didn't like it. They're like, no, we're going to have to put him up there and actually have him move around. And it was so wonderful the way that was shot. It was really cool. So if folks haven't watched that, it's definitely worth it just for the 10 minutes at the end.
You reminded me of the locations they talked about in that episode. They bring up a couple of times the Triple SI sites, which is a UK thing, really. It's sites of special scientific interests. They were at several of these sites, apparently, which means that there are several things at these locations they're not allowed to mess with. They can't touch certain plants or do anything to harm the area. So, and they really wanted to work in these areas, so they had a lot of extra work just being there. And I thought that was really interesting. I mean, I hope they're not spending too much money just so they can have those locations. But it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, plus just the difficulty of getting equipment there, power, people, food. The actors were talking about, I think it was the actor who plays Jace, was saying, you feel like you're back in time because there's nothing here. It's like, it's not hard to step into history when you're there. So it was cool stuff. Okay, so I'm going to now turn to our mistress of communications to give us a roundup on our listener communications we've got this week.
Thank you very much, Wendy. So first up, we have an email from Pat. Again, thank you. He says, small council regents. Nice. I always appreciate a quiet episode after a big shocking one, where everyone gets a chance to reset and reflect. Rhaenyra and Alicent dealing with mansplaining on their councils. Rhaenyra doing better keeping the upper hand, while Alicent gets sidelined by Larys and Cole, her usual supporters. Cole, who used who's used to Dornish battle, gets PTSD from dragon battle. It appears that the Brackens and Blackwoods have managed to not cross the line for generations, and Daemon comes along and it's all time for war crimes. That tracks, since Daemon tried to get Oscar Tully to introduce Granddad Grover to a pillow. Meanwhile, Jace wastes no time securing the twins. Book fans like to argue about who can ride dragons, and Pat's glad that Jace just laid it out there. Rhaenyra brings up the dogma. Jace, maybe that's just Valyrian propaganda. Pat's good with the ending about finding new riders for dragons because something has to happen with Vhagar. Thank you very much for the feedback, Pat. I'm so glad you brought up the propaganda because, I believe last week one of our listeners was, a little bitter about the differences in the battle from the book to the show and, talking about how it was supposed to go down. I noticed that the propaganda they were bringing back to town was that Aegon had won the fight. That it was all Aegon's doing. So there it is. Propaganda is rampant in Targaryens.
Yes, thank you, Pat. And I think we're going to talk a lot about that. The council meetings were really fun this time, and I'm glad you brought up. And there is such sexism, which you expect, but the idea, well, you can't rule us in a war. How many battles you been in, buddy? So yes, great feedback as always. Keep it coming. We love it.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to interpret that about the Dragon Riders. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it on this show, given what's happened with Laenor. Because every other time in the book and the show, it's claiming a dragon for life, and then a dragon can only be claimed again once the original dragon rider passes on. So, we'll see how that comes about. There was an article I read this week, it may have been The Ringer, where they were talking about theories on why that is. And so, the history of old Valyria, is stuff of legend and how dragons were created. And then there's, fire and blood is their literal motto. And there's theories that a combination of dark magic, actual literal blood, from the people were used to create the original dragons and the eggs that followed. So naturally the dragons are somehow magically synced to the blood of the people that created them. So that's one of the theories that's been out there for a while, on why that is. And even if it gets diluted through bastardry or second cousin twice removed and all that, there could something, still be in the blood that allows that connection to flourish. But it could just be propaganda too, written by the victors and the only ones who survived the doom. Anyway, thanks for the comments, Pat. Love to get them as always.
Yes, Pat, thank you for your comments. I thought you did capture a lot of the highlights from the episode really well. Especially the thoughts about women cannot rule in wartime. It actually made me immediately start to think about Queen Elizabeth. It's like, man, she must have heard some crazy stuff in her time as queen, especially in the beginning. Probably from her husband, too. And you also touched on Jacaerys, who for me was one of the MVPs of this episode. So I like that you gave a shout out to him, wanting to step up and having a cooler head and a better approach than Daemon about how to help the war effort, as well as Baela doing her part to, calm him down and say, maybe don't go to Harrenhal. Is there something else you could do? So thanks for your comments. We appreciate them.
Next up, we have Denise posting on our Discord. Definitely get on the Discord, guys. There's lots of stuff happening there. Pat, Denise severely disagrees with your thoughts on the ending, saying, come on, is that how they end the episode? Let's talk about awakening Vermithor and Silverwing and then cut off the episode? Come on, what a tease! Of course, that has me thinking that it was the perfect ending. Denise thought this episode was perfectly balanced with lots of character moments and says it's the best written episode yet. Big words. Damon has got to get out of that spooky castle. She compares his dreams to Homelander from The Boys being obsessed with being breastfed. Thank you for that, Denise. She can't understand the kingdom's fascination with Harrenhal or why anyone would want that shell of a place. Denise. Location, location, location. She is very proud of Jace's statesmanship. She's thinking they may merge a story arc where Rhaenyra rides sea smoke, but thinks the show might be pointing in a different way. I agree with that. Now she has awards for the best lines from Damon. There are things the crown must not be seen to do. Show them your worst. And boy, did Lord Blackwood kick up a mother of a storm. And second, Lord Corlys and Baela. Granddaughter, I would make you my heir. I am blood and fire. Driftmark must pass to salt and sea. Excellent lines. She also brought up the Ringerverse podcast that releases 2 House of the Dragon episodes a week, which are about 5 hours in total. Most recently, they went into a deep dive about Jace. She speculates that the scene between Jace and Rhaenyra that Emma Darcy loved the most was the last scene in this episode about the dragon seeds. Time will tell. She wasn't able to specify when she brought that up. So if you have time, go check out their podcast. And nudge to push you onto the Discord for more conversation. Denise always shares excellent video finds. This week was a good one, and I'll sum it up with, what's in the box? Thank you for your feedback, Denise.
Yeah, another plug for Discord. I know we always talk about that, and on the main show, there's always discussion, but it really is always fun to see what everyone's thinking and talk about. And what's wonderful about Discord is it's evergreen, right? Like if I just decided to watch a series because I hadn't seen it in a while, I can go and look at that and read what people said 3 or 4 months ago. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I thought about that. So anyway, thank you. I think, there was so much good in this, so much great discussion. And I wish all of us could talk that way. Like blood and fire, sea and salt, right? It's just like, yeah, I'm tired. Or like we just don't have that rhythm. I think that was one of the things that I loved about Star's Spartacus several years ago, is that not only was it had a lot of blood and a lot of nudity, but their way of speaking was really kind of, I won't say Shakespearean, but there had
poetic.
A ring to it that was really it was very poetic. Instead of saying thank you, gratitude. It was just interesting. And I love their way that this language is used on this show. So I'm glad you brought it up. Those were 2 of my favorite quotes as well. If we don't normally do, hey, let's share favorite quotes, but they would have been if on this one.
Yeah, on the Discord, check that on your bingo card again. I responded to Denise and said the other scene of the ones that we've seen thus far that Emma could be talking about was the one where Rhaenyra and Jace talk about the Song of Ice and Fire, and she finally clues him in to what that is. It's like, you're my heir. I thought that was very moving between the 2 of them. So both of those scenes were great. And what is it? Harry Collett is just killing it. He's doing a great job as Jace.
So one, thank you, Denise, for your comments. I've seen some conflicting feedback about these Damon Weirwood drink dreams lately. So I'm going to be curious when we get into details to hear folks' thoughts on that. Because he's making some really stupid decisions. Not even when he's having, post-dream, when he's like, who's at the table? It's kind of funny that he's always waking up from these dreams, sitting around that same table. But Jesse, you made a comment about the mode of speaking, and that actually made me think of the play version, the Iron Throne, because that, I would imagine, will have that same ability to have that sort of epic and poetic sort of element to it. And it's going to be really, I would guess it will be very poignant because we kind of know that this is a, star-crossed lovers sort of story. So, I'm glad you brought that up. The thing I liked that Denise pointed out was the end is the let's go find dragon seeds. And I've said many times on our main show that I love mysteries, and I always talk about my first genre show was Scooby-Doo. And this definitely left me with that feeling of, ooh, the Scooby Gang's in the library pulling down all those scrolls to start doing research on who are the seeds that fell out of the Targaryen line. So glad that you could share those comments with us. Denise, we appreciate it. So now let's get into discussing the show a little bit more. First, though, quick reviews and thoughts.
So I actually really liked this episode. We're coming off a big action finish with the last episode, so it's natural to get a little less action, a little more conversation. This episode had no bloat to it. Nothing felt out of place. Every scene served a purpose, even the scenes with the small folk. I felt like it was a good serve to hit off the next episode. I'm waiting for a big jaw-dropping moment, but not every episode can end with Bran getting pushed out a window. So I give this episode 9 out of 10 games of Duck, Duck, Goose.
Caught in a trap. I can't walk out. I also really liked this episode. This has been a strong season. And I don't know if it's because of the material they're doing is just really well done, but they're having enough creative juice to kind of move it and work it. But this has been a really strong season. I just liked everything about it. And, as I'm making notes, going, oh, I could talk about that scene. Oh, I could talk about that scene. So I'm going to give it 8.5 loyal dogs. We got another shot of the dog. I mean,
I had forgotten about that. Why do you gotta do that to me?
Let it go. He was mean to. So when I saw the dog following him, my heart was broke. So yes, 8.5 loyal dogs.
Yeah, the dog. It was good to see the dog again. Poor little guy. I'm going to give this a 9.0. We had last week was action packed and dramatic, and we had a big death and, all the stuff, that happened in that episode. But you need a calm after the storm as well as one before the storm too. And this was just jam packed with really good people talking scenes. And I love people talking scenes. We had both green and black council meetings. We had family meetings, lots of, sharp discussions, some excellent direction. If we don't talk about it in one of our favorite scenes, there's one shot that I thought was just particularly impressive. We got some, terrific, looks at Driftmark and the twins. We saw the twins like we've never seen the twins before. That just kind of gave the size and scope for it, and the camera kept pulling back, showing Jace walking away, and then you could just see up in the upper left-hand corner his dragon like in a field, So, I think it was Claire Kilner that directed this, did a masterful job. Just solid episode all the way around, and it's the show's really firing on all cylinders now.
I totally agree. I had 2 songs in my head as encapsulating this. The first was Grief is the Word and Where Do We Go From Here, if you remember your Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So grade-wise, I'm giving this 9 wagging dog's tails. Jesse, you and I are always on the same with our ratings. It was... That opening shot really set the tone. It was beautiful morning at Driftmark, and we're dealing with all the fallout of Rhaenys. And for the Team Black, it's all about we lost our key player, our biggest dragon. Where do we go? Kind of reassessing the bench. What do we do about Daemon at this point? And we have the challenges happening within her Black Council. Christine pointed out, the mansplaining about how war works, little Missy. I love that Rhaenyra, though, starts to strategize and lean on the resources she trusts. And we see Bela really step up and Jace really step up. And then on Team Green, completely miss the call on what this victory means. And, the parade that turns into the near riot by the time it's done. I'm sure we'll talk about the Green Council because that was just a masterclass in taking over. And we got to see it in an interesting way. So I think the direction was also key to why this episode felt so interesting, because we were seeing very familiar places, but a different look at them as well. So I thought that was a key part of it. And the sound effects, that scene when Aegon comes into his bed and starts getting treated, I didn't watch it, but I listened to it, and it was like shredding me just to listen to it. So I'm glad everybody liked it as much as I did. So now let's talk about some of those highlights and details. Let's start with you, Christine.
You almost said a third song title in your quick review there. I was going to call my highlight Daemon's Folly, but now I think I will call it How Do You Solve a Problem Like Daemon? Where to start? Daemon is just playing all the hits on the brute force playlist, threatening the Brackens with fiery death and not following through, authorizing war crimes to persuade them, showing up, with overconfidence to people who are just not having it. It's great. Hey, this time we actually get to hear what his orders were. He does, in fact, give Lord Blackwood carte blanche to do whatever it takes. And we also hear that he specifically does not want any of it tied to the crown. I predict some nasty fallout for Lord Blackwood. Daemon, stop drinking the Kool-Aid. You have to realize you are losing time. Why does he trust Alice? She just oozes creepy. We are treated to a lovely, romantic dream this time with his mother. This man needs therapy. And Alice just flat out bringing up his mother after that dream should be proof that she's listening in. I'm not sure what her agenda is, or if she even has one. I mean, she clearly cares for the small folk of the Riverlands, but is that why she started messing with Daemon from the start? Because I've decided that all the haunted stuff that's happening is just her. That it's just straight up her. But I am loving the little game of give and take between Daemon and Sir Simon. Daemon playing false confidence, Simon playing facts and knowledge. Simon nicely slipped in a suggestion to write to Rhaenyra because coin is like the universal language. And, if we can tie it to Rhaenyra, talk to your wife, communicate. But no. Now, Daemon may have had the last word in that king conversation, but I think Sir Simon's king consort left a more lasting impression. My favorite thing this season is how Sir Simon keeps popping up at the end of Daemon's dreams every single time. Like to the point where he's getting woken up and he's like, is the pudding now served? These scenes continue to bring me joy, and I think they may continue to be my favorite scenes every episode. Keep them coming.
I agree. That is a wonderful collection of scenes. Dragon MILF, right? I mean, it's just, because at first I'm like, who is this he's dreaming about? Oh, wait. Oh, no. But it is a family tradition as we continue doing song titles, right? I did think Dame is taking Finnegan. Right? The medicine you take when you're really nauseous, and like a lot of times the side effects is everything's like, woo. It's filmed perfectly. They edit it in such a strange way. And the other thing is, Matt Smith is such a likable actor, and he's doing such despicable things, and it's become very clear, I'm going to rule in King's Landing. Well, what about the queen? She can join me if she wants, and we'll ruin king and queen, right? She has said from the beginning, Rhaenyra, is he after my crown? And, we wanted to give him a benefit of the doubt. No, he's all about her. No, this is blind ambition. He wants this. He may be lying to himself that he's doing it because, the fairer sex can't rule possibly, right? I don't know if you guys remember years ago, right? They had the Barbie that math is hard, and everyone got really upset about that. Rightly so, by the way. So there is such this sexism that's even more prevalent in this season. And when we get to the Green Council, that comes out in even, triplicate. So yeah, great choice. I loved, we got to talk about this.
We could do a cover of Billy Joel's Honesty with misogyny, which would be appropriate for our song list too. You're right. It's been prevalent with everything, and Damon throwing his little 2 bits in about the fairer sex. Christine, I agree with you about Sir Simon. He's just a delight every time he shows up, and his just method of challenging somebody who could burn him to death or cut his head off on a whim, but just to get his points in. And I like that king consort. And Dave was like, that last bit is unnecessary. That was just, it's not laugh out loud funny like Tyrion could be sometimes, but there's a lot of subtle wit in here, and he's been a terrific addition. The shot I mentioned earlier, that really stuck with me, and the first time I saw it, I rewound it. And then when I did my rewatch today, I watched it 2 or 3 times, is when Damon is on the hillside in Wales, as it were, on the dragon. And then the Brackens are like, we'd rather burn. And then they turn around, and then you see the soft focus in the background of Caraxe's head just taking up the whole rest of the screen. And then, that's just a gorgeous shot and so intimidating. And then we smash cut to Damon like sitting on a rock going, I thought that was also some high comedy there. It's like, and he has to rethink it. Like, people that would rather burn than, go along with it. Maybe those are the kind of people I want. And then he comes up with his terrific war crimes idea. So yeah, Damon was all over the place. There was that meeting, and then the blood dripping in the milk or juice or whatever after the sex dream with his mom. Wow. That was some imagery right there. And then the way that they're handling his little timing freakouts when you mention audio slipping in and out, and like, he'll be there and then he'll see somebody and then he won't, and then he'll be in a different room altogether. The way that they edit those, I think, has been really masterful. So yeah, Damon needs to get out of Harrenhal.
Or at least get out of that bedroom and that bed and stop drinking Alice's drinks. Shannon, you mentioned the hillside. I just love that, especially the way, Matt Damon's all in his armor and he's sitting on this rock and he's like, and, and then we get the, unclear directions, right? He needed to tell the guy, do not bring my banner when you commit war crimes, right? Because the River Lords, when they come in, I love that scene. We haven't really talked about that. When he wakes up after, is it pudding? Is it time for pudding? And he comes in, and it was a great example of the complete disconnect he has with these people. He doesn't know these people at all. He's like, is it time for me to teach you about etiquette, about addressing your king in the middle of the night? And they are like not having it at all. They're like, I love that. And it was another reaffirmation that those are exactly the fighters that he needs, and he is doing absolutely nothing to win them over to his cause. And you talked about Sir Simon. He's great. I just love how they've used him as that anchor to bring Damon maybe back to reality or the present moment. And I'm going to be curious if he is, slow walking another little plot in the background. If his whole affable nature is really just to get, his honey-do list done. We need a roof. We need the bad guano out of the whaling tower. I got a list.
Oh man, I need this guy to work for me.
Or if there's something, bigger that he's doing there, because, he has in the back of his mind, that Laris killed his family and what that would mean, because he doesn't seem to want Harrenhal. I don't think he does. So, maybe he won't be unhappy if the Freys end up the next landlords. But that's a great choice, Christine. Jesse, what's your highlight?
So I'm going to cheat, as we often do, and I'm going to all kind of 3 smaller conversations and put it in one, because I think Bela was my episode MVP, because she is really showing that she is her mother's daughter, right? You see that strength, and she hasn't had the experience yet, but you could see she could be fierce like her mother. And her and Jace have a really nice discussion. And now that Corlys and Rhaenys is gone, this is our best hope for a happy couple, I think. And there's been, I think every time I see them together, they seem to be respectful of each other and doing well. And then Baelor and Queen Rhaenyra, I'm going to send a message. I don't want to send alone. They talk about, her grandmother and how much she remembers and how she wished she could have known her younger. And, we didn't always get along. The Queen's talking about it. And we remember those scenes, from the first season where they'll never let a woman sit on the Iron Throne. And then she said, but she came to be there. And I've decided I don't want to stand alone. And then we get her with her grandsire. And, she talked about, and he's, and I get it. He's lost the love of his life. And she's like, hey, look at what I lost. Look what everyone has lost. You're not alone in this. And are you going to just crawl up in a, corner and, feel sorry for yourself? Are you going to honor your wife and my grandmother's legacy? She died with honor, and the way my mother did and the way I hope to. And it kind of was, and then he's like, I'm going to make you my heir. And she's like, no, you're not. Like, you shouldn't even let him. Like, no, you're not getting off this easy. So kind of 3 smaller little scenes, but just really built that character, which of course means she's going to die by the end of the season, right? Because I'm falling in love with her. But yeah, great. I really want to hear what you guys think about that.
I like that choice, Jesse. I had all of those scenes highlighted as well. She was really, really good in this episode. There were so many just delicious little character moments for everybody. And she had 3 of them with 3 very different audiences. The scene with her and Jace, was very warm, and they're kind of talking strategy almost. And like, what should cause he was going to go off to Harrenhal and then eventually, through their conversation, he's like thinking about the Starks coming down, and it's like, well, I need to go to the twins instead. And he's like, don't say anything until after I'm gone. That was warm and fun and caring. And then the one with Rhaenyra, it was so touching when they were talking about Rhaenys and, what kind of woman she was and overcoming past, difficulties and the prickly nature of their relationship to begin with. That was really good. And then the one with Corlys, he's racked with grief, as we saw throughout the episode, and her ability to handle that and handle him, I thought showed a real maturity in stepping up and then telling him like, no, I'm not going to be the heir to Driftmark. I am fire and blood, so, she was definitely one of the MVPs of the episode, and that's a good choice, Jesse.
Yeah, so Jesse, this was my number one choice with those 3 scenes as well. So, excellent choice. I would just add, to me, Bela has taken up the slot that Rhaenys has vacated, and she even says that to Corlys. She's like, I want to emulate my mother, my grandmother, and she's really sort of put that on, and really well done. She is thinking strategically when she's talking to Jace, but she also knows about, knows how to have a relationship with Rhaenyra. And I'm sure she's heard some stories, because she was the ward to Rhaenys this whole time. So, she's heard the suspicions, I'm sure, about what Rhaenyra did or didn't do to Laenor. And then the scene with Corlys I thought was just fantastic, because she's like completely sets him on his path. He's going to run away again like he did, for 6 years before. And it's going to be interesting to see how he does or doesn't back her. I'm assuming he will back her, because he did the last time he showed up at a council meeting to sort of put everybody else in check. So that's a great choice.
There isn't much more to say about this. I mean, yeah, Bela definitely stepping up this episode and really taking her place. The conversation with Jace, I love how she quickly talked him down from going to talk to her father. I mean, I've never seen him with Daemon. Have they ever talked? What did he expect to say to him? And so, I mean, straight up good points. And then guiding him to make a better decision. Excellent working there. And then her conversation with Rhaenyra, I mean, I don't think we should expect to see a lot of funerals going forward, or else it'll be all battles and funerals. But it is nice to see that people are still grieving for the lost. And then her conversation with Lord Corlys, she had no problem picking up right where Rhaenys left off and pushing him to name Alan as his heir, even if she has no knowledge of him. I don't know how she does it. She's like instantly on the same path. Like, you know what? You're doing it wrong. You're looking in all the wrong places for this heir. You need to be looking for this specifically. And it was great advice. She's got great advice all around. So, excellent choice.
Yeah, and that was Corlys's instinct in the past. Whenever Rhaenys would offer up somebody, Luke. He was like, he's a kid. He's never even been on a ship, right? He's not qualified. So it's kind of interesting that he has this blind spot to an obvious, qualified candidate in Alan. So we'll see how that goes forward. Shannon, what's your highlight?
Well, it's difficult to choose with, like I said, there were so many not tiny, but smaller, really good character moments. But I'm going to go with the last scene between Rhaenyra and Jace. What I liked was there was a lot of back and forth emotionally there, even though they weren't necessarily saying what they were always thinking and how they were acting and how they were delivering their dialogue. 'Cause when they came in, they were kind of feeling each other out. And then there was a small line that, book readers will appreciate there, which she's studying and, talking about Visenya, the second or one of Aegon's original sister wives. And he's like, don't use Visenya as an example, I hope. Because she was the more stern and hardcore of the two sister wives. And then, her child, Maegor, became Maegor the Cruel, one of the worst Targaryen kings that there was. So him saying this is like, well, I don't want to turn out like that, and you don't treat me like that and raise me to be that way. And then so once again showing that he knows his history and he's prepared and he's studied. And so I thought that was a great little character touch there. And then the way she just segues right into, what is the mood at the twins? Letting him know, I know what you did. You're back. Why don't you tell me about it? Giving him an opening and not chastising him immediately for going off without her leave. And then after he says it, then she's like, I'm proud of you. So, there was some tension there, but it was also love and respect in that whole conversation. And then part of why she's frustrated is because she said it a couple times in this episode, I want to get on my dragon and go do it. That's, I'm a Targaryen. I have a dragon. Cyrex is faster, than Vhagar and that kind of stuff. And she's like, I chafe being here. And so I can empathize with what I'm telling you to do to hang out here because I'm sure you're chafing at being held back as well. And then she gets in a little dig, is like, would you fly before Vhagar as Luke did? That was a little dig into the ribs, from her own hurt and surely from Jace's hurt too, as a protective and concerned mama. But then within that same conversation, she also respects him as I don't know about a peer, but a fellow fighter and a fellow member of the royal family and everything. So, and then I like how their conversation steers around to the dragons. And then, I got to fight for my birthright and I need dragons. It's like Vermithor and Silverwing sleep beneath our feet. It's like they're right downstairs. And then how they get to the dragon seed idea. So I thought that was just a lovely conversation between the two that ran a gamut of emotions. And they were kind of sparring and parrying with each other, but in a loving, respectful way. And then I like the end is like, it's a mad thought, and that's where we end. I know Denise didn't like the way that ended, but I thought it was a nice button on their whole conversation.
Yeah, this was a great choice. They had to do a lot in this conversation because he basically, went AWOL, did a mission, spoke as if he had her authority. He just went off and made a treaty without really having the authority to do that. And a good thing it all worked out, right? But Rhaenyra's smart enough to understand. She's like, I gotta get some allies. Plus, he's my heir. And the thing that I liked in this episode was when she was both talking to Bela and Jace, she was talking about, what is the dynamics that's going on around her. And the challenges, she's telling Bela, these men are all challenging me, and want to set me aside. And when Jace is there, she's talking about her common instinct to his about, I don't want to send people to die. I want to fight, and I don't want to be responsible for people who are falling in battle. And he's like, you're the one that binds us together. So, he understands and can voice that, objective, reminder to her about, look, you are the crown. You can't go off and do this stuff. And I loved that, the comment you meant about Visenya, because she's talking about we have to have a solution for Vhagar. Visenya was the first rider of Vhagar. And we don't want to take up her parenting skills whatsoever. Battle may be different. She was a pretty good fighter. Dorne was kind of her last, the Rubicon that she couldn't cross. But, I also appreciate that she is treating her children like partners and allies. And you contrast that clearly with Alicent's relationship with her kids. It's like night and day. So, great choice, Shannon.
Yeah, I really did like this scene. I like that Rhaenyra was torn about her feelings about what Jace had done. She's a mother, but she's also the queen, so she's trying to be logical and not yell at him at the start, and then she lets him bring up her feelings before letting them loose on him. He really did step up with this political move, proving that he's king material, more so than Aegon or Aemond, and he has a lot to prove because of his questionable lineage. So I think if it comes to that, no one at the Black Council will question his leadership. I really liked that they were able to just talk candidly about the situation they were dealing with, just working out their problems and coming to a creative solution. And actually, I've been going to design school for a while, and this conversation reminded me of that. We're presented with a problem, and we're in groups, and we just sit down and talk it out. What's going to work? Why is this going to work? Why is it not going to work? Okay, well, what do we do about that? This was just a straight up problem solving brainstorm, and it looked great. It was nice to see that in this show where everybody's bickering with each other. All I can say is I hope that library has a card catalog.
I liked this scene a great deal as well. I wrote in my notes, Jace seems to have a little bit of a diplomacy gene, right? He seemed very smart and kind of gave back and forth, right? And then said, because you saw how, I forgot, what's Bela's younger sister?
Reyna.
Reyna.
Yeah, so Reyna in the veil, right, is just being pushed over. And he, on the other hand, listens and volleys, backs, and well, what do you want? And they tell him, and he's like, well, okay. And then, but we would expect blank if this happened, right? And so I just thought it was a really nice to see. And I hope we're going to talk about Alicent and the Green Council because there's a lot to discuss there. But, Rhaenyra is trying to be a good mother. We see, and she is listening to him. She is worrying about him. And mentoring him. And we talked about last week, the whole Song of Ice and Fire. And now then they're talking about, what about this? And I'm really happy that we had discussed about Dragonseed, and that in popular culture, there's been articles about it and everything. So it wasn't a total surprise, but I do think it's enough that if you had not paid attention, it wouldn't have been, it's a good kind of, well, maybe there's an option here. So I thought it was really well done, and it does help pay off that now that we've spent time with these possible, people with dragon riding blood somehow back in their lineage, that this could happen. The issue, though, is I think you wonder, is this going to destroy the mythos? And they talk about that, right? Like if a Tully can ride a dragon, right? Like this, because, and that once again goes into this, how big dragons are. When they're going through that victory celebration, they're just looking at, oh my God, sorry to be redundant, but oh my goodness, there is a god that has died, and they're mocking it. So yeah, really, really interesting. I'm sad that we've only got 3 episodes left, right? Because there's a lot going on, and we still have a lot to cover.
One quick thing on Jace, you made me think of, Jesse, that said that he has the diplomacy gene. When you said that, I thought back, remember that awkward family dinner meeting back in season 1 when it was, and the families were at each other's throats almost. And Jace is the one that asked Helena to dance, and kind of opened up the mood and calmed things down there. That's always been a little part of his character, and it's nice to see those moments pay off and be character consistent.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm gonna pick as my highlight the Green Council meeting, and actually the scene right preceding it, where we've seen Aegon get worked on by the Maesters, and Alicent is watching all of this unfold, and she's absolutely horrified. And then Aemon walks in and just stands at the end of the bed and looks at Aegon and turns to her and says, somebody needs to rule while he's in this shape. And then we cut to the Green Council meeting, and it's all shot deliberately by the director to focus on how Alicent is being iced out by everyone around her. And Aemon does not speak in that scene until the very end, when everyone else has decided that he's supposed to be the regent. And I love how she's standing and there's all this volleying going around literally behind her back. You have Larys looking at Kristen Cole. I think Cole needs to weigh in over here and giving him the side eye. And then when they pick Aemond, and our whole argument is, look, the reason why we didn't take Rhaenyra is because we don't want a woman in charge, so we don't want a woman in charge. And they conveniently forgot that this woman was in charge for like 15 years while Viserys was, drugged out on Milk of the Poppy. Once Aemon starts running the meeting, I loved the camera is only on Alicent, and you're hearing the conversation around her as she's internalizing like everything that's happened to her. I just loved how it was filmed. The actor did a great job of, we could see on her face how she's trying to hold it together, but you can see on her face that she's, just had it. It was a done deal. It was so clearly, Aemon's plan. So, and then when we have Aemond start to take charge, he immediately does a smart thing and a dumb thing, right? The dumb thing is people are trying to get out and they might learn about what's happening. Oh, we need to lock them down. So we need to lock all the starving people in with us so they might come kill us. But also cut down those rat catchers. And it was lovely to actually see that the dog got out of the gate with the dead bodies. So in theory, the dog's going to live somewhere outside King's Landing. So that was my highlight.
Will someone please adopt that dog? Please do that thing where you post on social media and just share it to everybody. This dog needs to be adopted. Now, I did love this scene. I actually had to rewatch it a few times because the sound design had my focus when they focus just on Alicent and everybody continues talking, but we just look at Alicent and the sound kind of goes flat. When I've been really sick or really upset, I've heard that sound. You can hear everything, but it sounds like it's in another world. I was just so focused on that I really wasn't hearing anything anybody was saying. I mean, I have the subtitles on. I can read it, even if it's too quiet. But I was just like, oh, I feel that feeling, that draining coming out. It was brilliantly done. Nobody really focuses on sound engineering, but whoever was responsible for that sound, brilliant, just brilliant. I totally missed that near the end of the conversation that Aemond had told them to lock everybody in. I was like, when they were doing it, I'm like, wait, when did that happen? And my boyfriend's like, that in the council meeting, they said that. Aemond said that. I'm like, really? Oh. I'm going to have to watch that again. The only part I really caught was to cut the rat catchers down. I'm like, thank you. Thank you very much for that. Now, I hated to agree with Lord Larys, but that was really the whole stance they were running on, that a woman can't rule a kingdom. And it's a solid point. I mean, our whole claim to the throne is that Rhaenyra's not allowed to be in charge. So you can't be in charge. There's really no sugarcoating that. So you're just going to have to deal with that. And, Aemond is definitely going to be a better ruler than Aegon. I will give him that. But he has a big blind spot. Like all the Greens seem to have this big blind spot. That is being good to the people you are ruling. This is like the only thing that Aegon had going better than Aemond, is that he actually cared what the small folk thought. He didn't know how to run the country. He was just like, I want them to like me. That, yes, you want those millions of people surrounding your castle to like you. I mean, honestly, what's the point of keeping them all locked in the city? What benefit does that have? You're just gonna have nasty, rotting bodies after they all starve to death, stinking up the place and spreading disease. Why are we keeping them there? That makes no sense. I really don't see who's on Team Green at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's what Mysaria, right, is when she talks to Rhaenyra. Yeah, Mysaria, right, that there's more than one ways to fight a war, which kind of ties into all this. Yeah, I thought this was really well directed and well written. And for all of Aemon's faults, he's smart. And, we've seen that the High Valyrian he speaks, he's calculating, and he plays it perfect, right? Like, like, oh, I'm not worthy. He doesn't say anything. He lets everyone else does the speaking. And Alicent is just floored that the guy that she's let fondle her feet betrays her, and her little midnight brunch buddy, he lets her, and she even calls him out. Oh, is it only your loyalty at night? Right? And she just is in shock. And you talked a lot about that, Christine, and I love that because it's all of a sudden they become the Charlie Brown teacher and parents into her, right? She just can't, what the hell just happened? Yeah, and she's in shock. And I actually think, Aemon, at least he has a plan. We often joke at work, and the guy told me this a long time ago. If mine's the only plan on the table, it's the best plan, right? It's easy for people to go, oh, that's a horrible idea. Okay, what's your idea? And my last boss I had was great. He goes, my best bad idea, right? It's like, yeah, I'm not saying it's a good idea. It's just my best bad idea.
Jon Snow said it in Game of Thrones, you're right. It's a bad idea. What's your idea?
Yeah. And so I love that he's doing that. And then we kick over right where, and Cole doesn't feel like he's betrayed her. He's honestly saying, I've spared you. We're about to go in a nuclear war, except, we're going to dragons. And whoever leads this, they're going to have nightmares the rest of their life. I've seen the future, and it's not Bruce Springsteen. It's dragons burning everything. So I really think everything about that was really well done. And I have a respect for Aemon that continues to grow as I see. I'm not saying yet I like the character, but I respect him and enjoy his performance. And it just is a really, not that, a lot of characters are charming or funny. This guy, though, is smart and wonderful to watch perform.
Yeah, that's a great choice. That was also on my list. I think you guys have covered a lot of it. The one thing in that follow-up scene with Alicent and Cole, your loyalty only flourishes at night, and then you vanish like a moth. That was just totally putting him in his place. And then the thing you mentioned about Cole and his PTSD, Normally we think he's the biggest a-hole in the show and hate him. But I think the actor showed a lot of depth to the character, displaying some real PTSD, after having seen what he saw. The other little detail I noticed is when it was decided, Eamon just picks up the ball, goes and sits at the head of the table, puts the ball on the little plate, and then, that's that. No more questions. The other points, I think, Christine, you made, they can't be hypocritical about it and say, well, we've run on this campaign issue of no women ruling the kingdom. We can't exactly name you. I mean, it's cruel, it's misogyny, and it's BS, but it's logical, and then give Claire Kilner and whoever was the sound designer and everything total credit. Because when I saw that scene, when it just starts fading out the sound, and Olivia Cooke just does a fantastic job with her eyes and her face while this is going on. And we can still barely make out they're talking about what's going to happen with this family or these supplies or whatever. But we can barely pay attention to it like her because we're so focused on her face and the design of the shot and the scene. And I've had those moments too when, whether it's getting terrible news or a terrible work situation or you're in the hospital or whatever, and you get that news and your mind is just racing and you start tuning out everything around you. That was just so wonderfully done from a production standpoint and by Olivia Cooke. So great choice.
Okay, so we did one round of highlights. Are there other highlights folks want to touch on? I'm guessing there might be a couple more.
I shall pass.
I feel like we could just keep talking and talking. I did want to, just because this has been a very musical episode, the soup lines, the victory parade, and straight to, from Monty Python, Not Dead Yet. Right?
I'm not dead yet. Also, yeah, tis but a flesh wound.
Yes. I'm not dead yet. I can dance. I can see. Yeah. So I just think it was great. And the other thing we talked about, the PTSD, Kristen all busy with his sword, right? And just not wanting to talk to him. And, Allison's all out of F's about the battle. I just want to talk about my son.
You brought up the sword thing. Can I just say they're working on Aegon. They're, pulling things off of wounds is nasty. And then we cut to salt on lemon. And I'm like, what? No! Oh, it's for the sword. And then I just think of like Deadpool, lemon and seltzer for blood, or wear red.
Yeah, one thing, I mentioned it briefly, but Jace with the phrase, I love that scene, not only just for the digital effects of seeing the twins and the dragon and all that stuff, but I like how they tried to intimidate him. He had a lower seat than everybody else, so it was like, almost like a kid at the table, the way he was framed kind of from his shoulders up. And then he gets up and he gets the wine. There was just like, it showed he was a shrewd negotiator. And then at the end, like when they asked for Harrenhal, and he said they're surely going to want more than that. And he goes, bent knees, and I like the way that ended. And then it just showed him walking off triumphant. I thought that was a nice little moment there.
Yeah, that was one I wanted to touch on because, as you pointed out earlier, seeing the twins that way, contrasting it with how we saw it in Game of Thrones, where it's a ruin, right? It's a horrible place to go to. It's not at this point in time. It's a beautiful place. I loved how in a story that always talks about how men are in charge, this woman is clearly in charge of the negotiations and, takes her shot at the Tullys, which is also a throwback to Game of Thrones, because Walder Frey was always talking about how the Tullys look down on us, they'd never intermarry with us, blah, blah, blah. They want dragon protection, they're worried about Vhagar, another seed in this overall episode about how do we solve the problem of Vhagar. Shannon, you mentioned when he stands up and has them fill his cup before they take their vow. So it is a total power reversal. Right now, you're below me. That was the actor working that out in the podcast interview. He talks about how he came up with that as they were working things out. He's like, there has to be some way that he asserts himself, and he's like, that was the moment that they came up with.
Oh, good for him. Good
choice.
actorly choice there.
Yeah.
So the actor who plays Jace is also stepping up and taking charge.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And the only thing I forgot to mention when we talked about Damon is I want Alice and Damon just to have a spinoff, right? They are fun anytime they're together. Like, let's just get they're wacky roommates in a haunted castle. I see a sitcom there.
I see a cooking show, Jesse, clearly.
Cooking show. Good.
Any other highlights? Any dings?
Okay.
Questionable stuff.
Minor quibbles. So the one small folk during the parade of the dragon head says, but dragons are gods. And I'm like, yeah, and it was killed by another dragon. Gods kill gods all the time. This changes nothing. Like I said, minor quibble. And this is not so much a ding, but I just feel bad, you know? Poor Rhaena. The princess has been locked up in a tower to be forgotten about. I just felt bad for her. She had one good comeback, that Rhaenyra had exceeded her promise by providing 2 dragons. But that was really all she had working for her, and the rest of it was just her getting put more in her place. I really hope she gets a bounce back before the season ends, because I'm just... That's pathetic. It's not right.
And I have a question. Was the Vale where they had the kid that was still at 17
yeah, the Eerie.
breastfeeding?
Yeah, the moon door.
It was like
Okay.
7 or 8, okay? Not 17.
Oh, I think he was like 18 still breastfeeding from his mom, right?
I want to see
thinking
the
of the
Batman
boys.
fly.
Well, he was about 6 years old when he was still breastfeeding.
Yeah. But she reminded me of the actress who played that, and they're just not very cool people. I don't like them.
Well, she's also the sister of Emma, Viserys' wife.
Right. And that's why they're in the
So
Vale.
she can't be all that bad.
Yeah, so
I mean, she had a good point, you know, like her stance makes sense. And, you know, she's in charge. She's gotta, you know, keep it real. So I don't fault her for anything she said. I just
No,
feel
and
bad
not
for
everybody
Rhaena.
can step up immediately, you know, and like that. So hopefully Rhaena's time comes and, you know, she's relatively safe there, and a couple little dragons are growing, and there's another kid there that could be an heir or a valuable member of the family. The only thing I was just thinking about that dog. I don't want that dog to wind up like Seymour in Futurama, you know, and just following around and just like wait on the guy's death.
Stop bringing up sad dog stuff. Stop.
I know. So hopefully now that he's out of the city, he goes and plays in a meadow and everything is happy.
I hope so. I hope he doesn't show up at Hugh's house, because he's not going to get a very good meal there. The question I had, it's more a question of the choice of what was the purpose of it. You know, we get it. We got a lot of mommy issues with these Targaryens between Daemon and Aegon and Aegon. And I did think it was a beautiful moment where Alicent is by Aegon's bedside, you know, for a long time. She touches his cheek, and then she is leaving, and that's when you hear him say "mummy." It was really sweet. But the Daemon edible sex dream, what was the point of that? And the reason I asked that is because when it first started, I had no idea that was his mother. And I was originally thinking it was Emma, Viserys' wife. And I was like, oh, that explains a lot. If he was secretly in love with his brother's wife, you know, to contribute to the angst between their relationship. And then it was just weird. And I was like, okay, we've had plenty of weird. So I was sort of, after watching this the second time, I was like, what was really the point of that scene other than to tell us we're now way out there. You know, he's really getting crazy.
I think, and this is me having only taken one psych class, we're still unraveling Damon's psyche. He is working through his issues. I mean, we've got a lot of guilt dreams, and this is more, I think, and this is me speculating, it's about what Damon needs. Mothers provide for needs. His mother was never there for him, probably died giving birth to him.
He
was 3.
And
when she died.
Okay, so he barely remembers her. And, the things he needs, men, they want companionship. So there's a metaphor there, but he also needs reassurance that he deserves to be king. He should be king. This is the path he's chosen to take, and he needs someone he trusts to build him up mentally for that. And so that is my take on that whole scene. And because dreams are messed up, this is the form it took. Also because it's probably drug-induced.
Yeah, that's how I took it as well. That because his mother died when he was so young, he never had that mother figure. And then so he's always felt like as a second son, he never got the affirmations. And he's like, I'm the baddest fighter. I got the baddest drag, all his ego things that he uses to prop himself up. And he says them out loud, but he needs a reassuring mother figure. I mean, part of like what she told him was, you're the best boy, kind of. It should have been you. And I think he's using that as something to rationalize his actions of call me the king, and she can come if she wants,
Okay. I will accept those answers.
Yeah. And the only thing what I was thinking is Lost was all about daddy issues. And I just think about mommy issues. They keep going on. And when you hear the actors talk about their characters, right? How much they want Allison's love, like the 2 boys, how much they want the support. And I think it could have worked, because originally I thought he was remembering his dead wife. Not the one he killed the first time, but the one who died, from the dragon fire. And so then when I saw it was his mom, I had the same kind of, ooh. But yeah, I guess that's why.
Well, I mean, the ooh, because it's your mom, but also I was just like, what is this actually advancing for me with Damon in particular? I did like the moment where he again sees Lena, the dead wife you're referring to, and she says, what have you been doing for your daughters? And so and to go back to your comment earlier about Rhaena in the Vale, I am hoping that she is a slow burn in terms of eventually she's going to have her moment, to step up. Either, these little dragons, she's going to do something with them, or somehow, I assume because they've set this as her big challenge, she's going to need to claim a dragon at some point.
Please.
Okay. So any final thoughts before we go?
How are we doing on those predictions, Shannon? You keeping track?
I am keeping track. So we'll have an update postseason.
Are you keeping score?
No score updates until the end.
All right.
Well,
no worries.
I had shared beforehand, and Brent can cut this out, but I needed this night, and I needed the 3 of you, so thank you. This was a lot of fun, and it lifted my spirits.
You're welcome, Jesse.
Oh, good.
Quite welcome.
Good. We're glad.
I'm so glad we could lift your spirits, at least for tonight.
Yay. Maybe you don't have a rainbow, but we can probably get you a puppy. There's a couple hanging outside. I know where
there's a dog wandering around.
And he's the best dog. I would adopt that dog in a minute. Yes.
Okay, well, with that, I want to thank all of you all for listening. We really appreciate it. We appreciate folks sending in feedback and thoughts as well. And I want to thank our maesters, Christine, Jesse, and Shannon. We will see you again soon.
Talk to y'all next week. Bye.
Check your local shelters for adoptions.
And spay and neuter your dogs.
Thanks, Bob.
We'd love to hear our listeners voice thoughts and send us feedback. Call us at 706-927-8478. Stop by our tuningintoscifitv.com blog to record a SpeakPipe message, or check the show notes and leave us comments. From the blog, you can also find links to forum discussions and subscribe to our RSS feed. Call into our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Skype account and leave us a message. Be social with us on our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Facebook page, or follow us at Tuning Into Sci-Fi on Twitter.
You've been listening to Small Council Matters from Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV, episode 115, recorded July 16th, 2024.